Ons is geskakel op GROOTplaas. Op 'n maandag is dit tyd vir plaaspraatjies en ons skop af met 'n vleisetende parasiet wat Amerikaanse boere bietjie op hulle tone hou. Nou Amerikaanse veeprodusente is op hoë gereedheid nadat die sogenaamde nuwe wêreldse skroefwurm weer in Texas opgeduik het. Nou die eerste bevestigde geval in dekades. Anders as gewone wurms voed hierdie parasiet op lewende weefsel en kan dit ernstige wonde en selfs sterftes by vee veroorsaak. Owerhede werk nou saam met boere om die verspreiding te beperk deur onder meer steriele vlee vry te laat om die plaag te beheer. Nou die uitbreking beklemtoon hoe vinnig veesiektes en plaag-ekonomiese verliese kan veroorsaak en waarom biosekuriteit steeds een van die belangrikste bestuurspraktyke op enige plaas bly. En dan antibiotika in vee kan skerp toeneem. Die Verenigde Nasies waarsku dat die gebruik van antibiotika in veeproduksie teen 2040 met meer as 30% kan toeneem indien huidige tendense voortduur. Nou kenners sê die groter gebruik van antibiotika kan bydra tot antibiotika weerstandigheid waar bakterieë al moeiliker behandelbaar raak. Die uitdaging is om 'n balans te vind tussen dieregesondheid en verantwoordelike medikasiegebruik. Navorsers beklemtoon dat goeie voeding, biosekuriteit en voorkomende gesondheidspraktyke noodsaaklik is om die behoefte aan antibiotika te verminder. En dan interessante stukkie nuus van NASA af. Hulle het onlangs 'n indrukwekkende satellietbeeld van Suid-Afrika se landbougebiede vrygestel wat soos 'n kleurvolle lappies kombers vanuit die ruimte lyk. Nou die beeld is vasgevang deur die NASA NISAR satelliet wat 'n gevorderde radar gebruik om gewasse en plante groei op die aarde te monitor. Buiten die pragtige beeldmateriaal kan die tegnologie boere en navorsers help om gewasgroei, grondtoestande en selfs droogtestres beter te verstaan. Dit wys hoe moderne ruimte- en satelliettegnologie toenemend 'n rol speel in presisieboerdery en beter besluitneming op plase reg oor die wêreld. Dis plaaspraatjies vir vandag. Nou eers 'n tyd om te gesels met die manne van AgriHawk oor besproeiing op die plaas. Ons is terug op GROOTplaas net hierna.
Ons is DJI Agriculture in Afrika.
Jy is geskakel op GROOTplaas en ons gesels weer vandag met 'n bemarkingsafdeling man, hierso Ewert Potgieter van AgriHawk. Ewert, welkom terug en is lekker om jou te sien.
Asai, dankie.
Ewert, so kan jy vir ons sê wat het jy alles nodig om te begin werk met drones?
Alright, Dippie, so vir 'n begin het jy obviously die drone nodig. So jy kyk na die drone en ons stel 3 batterye voor sodat jy die heeltyd net kan aanhou werk. So een laai, een is in die drone en een staan en wag vir as hy terugkom. Dan het jy ook jou generator nodig. Dis 'n DJI generator, so hy is spesiaal ontwerp vir die drone en die batterye. Die batterye laai in so 8 na 11 minute, hang af nou natuurlik hoe pap hy teruggekom het. En dan het jy ook 'n opsie om 'n strooier te vat vir kunsmis, korrelgif of saad. Daar's natuurlik ook 'n lifting kit. So as jy sou wou iets optel, kom ons sê 'n sonpaneel op die dak sit, hooibale uit die lande uitvlieg of natuurlik 'n spulpuntwiel of motor invlieg, dan is dit dan nou jou kit. En dan jou controller en 'n ekstra battery of 2 vir die controller.
So wanneer mense die proses onder die knie het, hoe werk dit in terme van kartering, opstyg en die vlieg van hierdie drones?
So jy begin by jou kartering. Jy kyk obviously op jou controller na jou land en jy plot hom so met jou vinger uit en jy sê, kom ons sê vir argumentsonthaalwe, jou milies is land 1. Hy onthou natuurlik daai land en dan kies jy jou hoogte bo gewasse wat jy wil spuit, jou spoed wat jy wil spuit, jou spuitwyte of strooiwyte, en dan druppelgrootte en soos hulle in Engels sê application rate, so hoeveel liter per hektaar sit jy dan nou neer. En ja, dan sê jy start en dan gaat hy.
Hoe vinnig en effektief werk hierdie drones?
Op sekere toepassings het jy baie hoë effektiwiteit want dis presies. Jy kan kolletjies gaan spuit in jou land wat 'n probleem is. Of as jy 'n stuk aan die kant gemis het dalk met jou trekker of jou hoogloop spuit, kan jy net daai stukkie gaan spuit. Jy kan ook kleiner hoeveelhede aanmaak, so jy hoef nie 'n groot hoeveelheid chemikalie aan te maak op 'n slag nie. So ja, dit bespaar ook tyd. Jy kan in die nag werk sodat jy môreoggend dadelik kan begin. Jy bespaar ook op arbeid. Jy het 1 man nodig om jou te help laai en volmaak en dan natuurlik 1 man om hom te operate of jy kan alles self doen. Dit hang nou maar alles af van jou vermoëns.
En dan die groot vraag natuurlik, as 'n mens so massive drone het, hoe vervoer 'n mens hierdie ding rond?
Goed, so jy het ook natuurlik die opsie vir 'n sleepwa wat 1 of 2 drones kan vat, 1 of 2 generators, dan al jou batterye, hy het 'n mengtank en hy het 'n 1000 liter watertank. Natuurlik die pompies, alles is ingebou, so jy haak hom net en laat gaan.
So die groot vraag is, kan enige iemand hierdie drones vlieg, jonk, oud, kan ek dit op my stoep sit en vlieg?
Doopie, jy kan in die bakkie sit met die aircon aan en hom vlieg. So ja, enige iemand kan hom vlieg. Hy vlieg eintlik maar homself. Obviously kan jy hom manually ook vlieg. Maar as jy hom gekarteer het en jou land gekies het en natuurlik al jou verstellings gemaak het wat jy wou maak, dan vlieg hy hom eintlik maar homself. Daar is wel 'n bietjie opleiding nodig om te weet hoe werk die masjien en gemaklik te raak, maar ja, enige iemand kan hom.
Evert, nou as iemand in kontak wil kom met julle, hoe gaan hulle te werk?
So ons het 'n webwerf, agrihawk.africa. Julle kan ons daar kry, julle kan ons op Facebook kry, op Instagram, of jy kan sommer maar net op Google search agrihawk.
Dankie Evert vir jou tyd. Dis ons gas op Grootplaas, Evert Potgieterhuis van AgriHawk en hy's in die bemarkingsafdeling. Ons is nou weer terug op Grootplaas net hierna. Welkom terug op Grootplaas en ons gas saam met ons vanoggend is Professor Stuart Pimm. Hy is op die oomblik in die buiteland en hy is hier om te gesels oor die sukses van bewaring. Dr. Pimm, good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you too.
So the study that was just published argues that conservation is delivering measurable results. What is the strongest evidence that conservation efforts are actually working?
You know, I think if you look across South Africa, we're very much aware that we've done a great job with conservation. I mean, we have more elephants in some places than we know what to do with. And this was very much in the context of rejecting international studies that seem to think that we're losing our wildlife, a claim that we've lost 75% of our wildlife in the last couple of decades. I think you look around how biodiversity, wildlife has been managed across not just South Africa, but Southern Africa in general, you can see that there's a lot to celebrate. There's a lot of problems too. I'm not trying to say that there aren't, but it's not it's not a story of complete doom and disaster.
So, Professor Pimm, the paper suggests that conservation success is often overlooked. Why do you think that public perception is still that biodiversity conservation is failing?
Well, I think it's pretty unfortunate. I think it's often portrayed as that so that people can raise money. The world is going to hell, please give me money and I'll fix it. Yeah, conservation needs money, but we need to tackle the problems that we have. We need to celebrate the successes that we've had.
So the research estimates that conservation has prevented numerous bird and mammal extinctions since the 1990s. How much worse could the situation have been without these interventions?
You know, one of my favorite animals is the black wildebeest. Now, this is an animal that I think should be on the cover of a fashion magazine. It's all black. It's got this gorgeous white fluffy tail. I mean, it's just an amazing animal. And it was almost extinct in South Africa. And the wildlife authorities brought it back. They reintroduced it to different places. I think it's a lovely example of what we can do to save species on the brink of extinction. Yeah, I mean, elephant populations are increasing to the point where some areas like Addo have to put elephant populations on contraceptives. I'm not trying to say it's all good, but there are plenty of examples where we have done an incredible job of bringing our wildlife back from the very edge of extinction.
Now, Professor Pimm, you've also highlighted, and this was quite interesting for me to see, that South Africa reintroduced species such as rhinos, zebras, giraffes, and antelope. Why is this considered such an important conservation success story?
I think many people outside of South Africa, Southern Africa in general, thinks that, African wildlife is going extinct, it's going to hell. It's not true. I mean, Southern Africa in general affords extraordinary experiences for tourists who come from North America, from Europe, from Asia, to see our national parks. And that's something that we need to say, hey, there's a lot of great things to see.
So why can negative messaging affect conservation efforts on the ground?
Well, I think the problem is that what it does, it tends to distract from the very real challenges. We need to have more space for wildlife. And as we do that, wildlife comes into conflict with people. I mean, many tourists from, say, North America only experience, wildlife if they're sitting in their Land Rover with a glass of gin and tonic in their hand in the evening. Wildlife can be a very serious threat and a problem for communities that live near wildlife. And I think it's those issues that we have to begin to solve. We've got to, look at the challenges that we face. Yes, rhinos are still being poached. We have to understand why people are not coming together and saying this isn't something that we want. We need resources to solve these problems. But there's a lot of problems, but there's a lot to celebrate, and let's get the story right.
Now, one of the key findings from the paper is that there is no single global trend in biodiversity. Why is it important to understand conservation on a regional and species-specific level?
Well, look, there are certainly parts of the world that are in trouble. Wildlife populations in West Africa, for example, are not in such good a shape as Southern Africa. If you look in the oceans, there have been some striking successes. Many marine mammals, whales, and so on are doing much better now than they were, 30 or 40 years ago. But if you look at sharks, we are continuing to drive shark populations to extinction. If we look at, marine turtles, most of them are doing better. In other words, it's a mixed bag of things, and we need to understand what's working and what isn't. And all of those things are things that bring excitement to people when they have the opportunity to see them.
Now, Professor, you also mentioned that government should focus on harmful environmental subsidies. What are some of the examples of these subsidies, and how do they contribute to biodiversity loss?
I think one of the great challenges is that countries often spend huge amounts of money to do bad things to the environment. Fisheries are a major concern in many countries. Many African countries, many poor African countries, are harmed by the fact that other nations pay their fishermen to come and, scarf up all the offshore fisheries. And one of the best things that happened to fisheries in the world was when the Soviet Union fell apart, because it had a fleet that did incredible damage worldwide to fisheries, and the government paid for that. So we need to make sure that we're not harming the environment by paying economic incentives to do environmentally harmful things.
So, Professor Pimm, just quickly, we have about 30 seconds left. What would you like to see governments around the world do to increase our biodiversity?
Well, globally, we need to protect more. We need to protect more of the land and more of the ocean. And a year or so ago, the nations of the world got together and agreed that we ought to try and protect 30% of the planet at an agreement that's called the Kunming-Montreal Agreement. South Africa and many African countries are party to that. I'd like to see other countries be party to that too.
Professor Pimm, thank you so much for your time this morning. That's Professor Stuart Pimm, extraordinary professor of the University of Pretoria's Conservation Ecology Research Unit. Dis al waarvoor ons tyd het vir Grootplaas vir vandag. Ons hoop jy het dit saam met ons geniet en dan skakel dan weer môreoggend in ons weer saam kyk.